little while, but thank you for being here. Okay, so this is our Learn and Lunch webinar series that Afford holds, and it's linked with the Afford Business Club, which is a club that we've put in place to support diaspora entrepreneurs who are interested in starting, expanding, investing in businesses on the continent and wanting information much like we're going to be talking about today, both from the area that they live in, which is generally outside the continent, and then also their interests, which are on the continent, and looking at how can we fill that information gap, which is felt so deeply by so many entrepreneurs. Afford itself has been focusing on this space for, this is our 26th year of working with diaspora and looking at how we can enhance their input. And we've seen that in entrepreneurship, job creation is a key concern both for diaspora and obviously for those on the continent. And so this is an area we've really focused on and harnessed a lot of our attention and focus. And this is really what brings us here today. So Ronke, thank you. Member of Afford. Vickie, long-time friend, connected to Afford and have done amazing things. So thank you so much for being on board. And I'm gonna start with Vickie, if that's okay.
Sure.
So let me work some magic over here with these screens. Okay. And yes. Yes, you are. Voila. Okay, so Vickie has an extensive background in content production, strategic communications, and marketing. She employed emerging talent in PR branding and advertising and established VRNC marketing in Ghana in 2013, but now is in Sierra Leone. And under your leadership, VRNC Marketing has delivered campaigns for multinationals across the West African sub-region and trained over 300 youth pro bono on digital skills and business development. There's some more information on the screen there, people moved away, but that is just amazing. And thank you so much for joining us and bringing your knowledge and everything with us. I mean, is there anything you want to tell us first about your business and perhaps even about how you're responding to the current situation?
Thank you. So just how we're responding. So in Sierra Leone, we haven't really had a lot of cases so far, but I felt that as a business leader, I still needed to put my employee safety first. So even though there isn't like a national lockdown or stay at home, we had a 72-hour mandatory stay at home and then everybody was free to move. But my team has to travel really far to come to work, and public transportation just increases your risk. So the first thing that I did is that after the mandatory national lockdown ended, I asked everybody to stay home for an additional 2 weeks, just so that we have a better understanding of what's going on. And they're due back on Monday, and in that time I put together just a brief in terms of guidelines for how they commute to work. We're purchasing reusable face masks from one of the local fashion companies. Everybody will get a set of 5 so that every day they come to work, they have one that they can use. We're buying hand sanitizer that everybody can have on them, because I mean, the reality is that people do want to protect themselves, but they may just not have the means. These are difficult times in Sierra Leone, but there are always difficult times in Sierra Leone. So that's just one way in which we're responding. And then also just on an internal side is I had to assess where we are now, because we're a team of 7, where we are now in Sierra Leone, and then there are 2 additional people in Ghana. Where we are now is, okay, we don't know how long this crisis will last. And as an entrepreneur, I have to think about sustainability. What are some of the things that I can't afford to do if this were to last 6 months, if this was to last a year? So I had a meeting with my staff, and one of the first conversations we had off the bat, actually, which was an idea that was suggested internally, somebody volunteered to take a pay cut as soon as the crisis hit, sent me and they had just gotten a raise like 2 months earlier. And one of my employees sent me a message to just say, I know things are really hard. I would be open to taking less of my salary to just make it easier for you. And it almost brought me to tears, but it was like an amazing moment. And then, I brought that as a larger conversation to the rest of the team. but I really do not want to furlough or lay off anyone, because I know that they're all critical members in their family as like making financial contributions. But I don't know how long this is going to last, and I want all of us to be able to, at least at the end of the month, have income, have revenue coming in. And so I presented the idea of would they be okay with taking a pay cut for the next 3 months, and everybody was like, sure. So everybody's on 50% salary for the next 3 months, and then we'll assess and see how we are. Doing that allows me to be able to stay in business while also reducing my anxiety and panic attacks about salaries at the end of the month. So that's kind of where we are. It works well for us in terms of going fully digital or virtual, because in general, working between Ghana and Sierra Leone, we've always kind of done remote work. This is the first year that I actually have a physical office space, which I just completed in January. But for the first 5 years or 6 years of business operations, I worked from hotels and cafes and restaurants in Accra and Freetown, never really had a physical space. It was always challenging for my staff, but I told them, we're in comms. Ultimately, you don't need an office to communicate, people. You can communicate from anywhere as long as you have the internet. And that's really what I tried to instill in them. So this hasn't necessarily disrupted our work style. What it's just done is it's restricted our inflows. Because the reason why I'm stuck in Sierra Leone and not Ghana is that as soon as I arrived in Sierra Leone, I came to sign a contract that I was like already planning how we were going to spend this money to finish our building. And to now have to, for them to contact and say, okay, we're going to put a hold, of course, as they should, because it's just, you don't know, you realize that like, oh, things have changed, and you really have to respond quickly. And also respond as though you realize that you're in a state of uncertainty. I think those people who will struggle right now with their businesses are those who try to predict when the crisis will end and say, oh, it's 2 months, oh, it's 3 months. You have to act as though you don't know when it will end. And I think that's the best way to cushion the crisis's impact on entrepreneurs and startups on the continent.
Okay. Thank you so much, Vickie. I'm just going to jump in there quickly to a couple of things. First of all, welcome to all the participants who've joined. You will find that you're on mute. So if you have any questions, please pop them into the chat area, Q&A, and then we will get to those later. We're going to have a conversation, interview style first, and then we'll come to everybody's conversation and bring you into the conversation. That is actually really useful, Vickie, the fact that you have actually had so much experience of working remotely in an African country. Are you based, in Ghana or Sierra Leone?
Good question.
So, okay, between
no,
that,
I really am 4 weeks in, 4 weeks out.
Okay.
Initially, I was fully based in Ghana, but as over the last 3 years, I've been trying to grow more in Sierra Leone, just because this is my home, and I always felt like, being in Ghana is great, but I also should be established here. And also there's a great need, not just for comms services, but also job, unemployment is really high. And I felt like if I could come in, and most of the people that work for me actually are people who I trained first. They never had this skill set, and they came to blogging master classes that I taught, comms classes that I taught. And they were the people who stayed after the classes and said, oh my God, this is so useful. Can I do something for you for free? Can I hang around? Can I send you stories? So they demonstrated an interest, and now 4 of those people are full-time staff. So, which is, for me, it's reaffirming, because yes, I want to make a profit, but I relocated from the diaspora back to the continent because I wanted to have an impact on, national development. And I think a key part of that for us is job creation, especially for young people. So right now I split my time halfway. So my family, like my son and my mom, are in Ghana, and I think Ghana is my primary home. Sierra Leone, which is where I'm from, is now my secondary home. It's where I work. I work mostly in Sierra Leone, and then I go to Ghana and I do more remote work there, though I have clients.
So with that movement and with that working on the continent in 2 different, and actually countries with 2 different development levels to some extent, what advice could you give to people who are now having to work remotely in these kind of environments where internet, phone lines, what are like, say, your key considerations? Electricity. So what are some of the ways that somebody out there who's an entrepreneur is quickly having to reassess how they're going to work in these environments? What are some of the key things that you have seen have just been your necessity?
Yeah. So from jump, I always believe that agility was actually a skill set, or agility was an asset, right? I saw my mobility as the capacity to be agile. And I think what's going to be tough for people who are kind of like fixed to a physical location to do work is that this isn't going to allow for that. So what I would advise is just to realize that, especially now, everybody's in the same boat, right? There was a time, and this is just the truth, is that people thought you were a certain kind of unserious or unprofessional if you said, hey, let's have a meeting in a hotel lobby, or let's have a meeting in a restaurant. Like, you know, people are like, I mean, don't you have an office? I want to come to your office. I'm like, this is my office. So what's really great is that now you don't have to have that added stigma that questions your professionalism or your expertise because you're working remotely, because, hey, welcome to the new world.
So it's an opportunity in some ways for some people.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I've always been the kind of person that was like, if you can't come to me, I'll come to you. We actually don't have to have a physical meeting. Let's do a hangout. Let's do a meetup online, virtual. Because again, you know, just realistically, especially in Accra, the level of traffic in Accra, like that kind of traffic, to leave one side 45 minutes to go for a meeting and then come back, it's a whole day wasted. So I've always felt like, you know, digital and virtual was the way. And for me, I'm thrilled that we're moving on. Yes, electricity is going to be a problem. Access to internet is going to be a problem. But the reality is that these are problems now that are shared across all, like where we all have this problem. It's so a level playing field. So when I'm on a call and it disconnects, and you know, who the person's on the other end, I don't have to be overly apologetic because, you know, they probably will lose their connectivity as well. So I don't get bogged down by, you know, TIA issues. This is Africa issues. These are the realities. And I feel like if you're doing business here, both you and your clients have to not get bogged down by these problems. And at the same time, for me, at least what's worked is just delivering on service, right? Like, yes, okay, there might be these other glitches that I can't control, but the parts that I can control, which is the outputs, the quality, the level of productivity in my business is what like covers you through all that. Like, yes, the environment may have these challenges, but if you're delivering value to your customers, then it doesn't really matter. Everybody, like, the trust will be there, and your customers they'll see the value in your work.
Okay. All right, so we'll come back. And so thank you so much, Vickie, for sharing. And hello, Madame Ronke, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No, thank you for taking the time out and being part. So let me just pop you up there. Ronke's bio is also extensive and extremely inspiring. Madame is the founder of AriatuPR and specializes in PR and communications for clients in a range of B2C, business to customer industries, including lifestyle and fast moving consumer goods, FMCG, I got it. And where am I? Travel, food, and the creative sector. Ronke was named one of the top 400 women of the year in the UK for her work with the Islington Chamber of Commerce, and is a regular contributor on talk radio, as well as popping up on BBC News every so random, or other news cycles. You're suddenly seeing Ronke there talking about crisis management or something else of equal interest. And so we're really happy to have you here. We've been able to get a really nice grounding in what some of the businesses on the continent could be thinking about. And so we'd really love to get your take on what are some of the key things businesses in the UK, Europe, and also in Africa could be doing right now, internally and externally, to help with their positioning?
I think one of the first things is to make sure you have a consistent source of fact-based information. So make sure you're getting your communications from the confirmed sources. So the government, whilst it may not be perfect in the UK or in some parts of Europe, make sure you tap into some of the communication channels, because they have the information that we need, especially when it comes to funding, financing, the whole furloughing debate and conversation. We need to make sure all our information is fact-based, and you disseminate and share that information internally to your team. And even if you're just an individual, make sure that you're communicating with your accountant, your lawyer, if you've got one, or there's lots of platforms that actually offer free information. I know Afford UK offers webinars and conversations. There's lots of information out there. So just make sure you're getting verified information, because at the moment there's just so much content and so much news that's overwhelming us, that if we're not careful, we can become kind of blurred in our understanding of what we need to do. So I think the most important thing is just to make sure you get direct channels of communication, and always ensure it's as fact-based as possible. I know sometimes you can't be 100%, sometimes the facts change. But for now, I think it's important to focus on the facts.
That's a really key one. I'm sure many others are on a number of platforms and getting inundated with huge amounts of information. It's almost impossible to figure out how to wade through and find out what's fake to what's actually real. So finding those key, if it's government, finding the official government sites and so on to get your information from is definitely going to be key. What would you say that companies can be doing to both not support their staff, we've touched on that a bit, thank you Vickie, but perhaps with their customers and clients, what should they be thinking about doing right now?
Well, I think some of the best ways of communicating at the moment have been, I've seen emails, for example, from company, I've forgotten that I was on their mailing list, right? But I think those emails have reassured me that, they're doing good things within their company, but also that they're available to me, right? So I think going back to basics actually is something people should remember. So using your email database, I think making sure your social media platforms are active and responsive. Now, you don't have to be on all social media platforms. What I've noticed is some people are suddenly using everything, Instagram Live, suddenly they're doing live streams where it's not necessarily relevant to do a live stream. Look at your communication strategy and think about your customers and your consumers, and think about the best ways of communicating with them. So for me, like I said, the email approach was actually quite refreshing, because I got one or two emails from a few of the brands that I've purchased from in the past, or had a communication from in the past, and it actually was really reassuring. It was clear, and that was it. I wasn't bombarded on my social media with lots of different kinds of messages. But if you are on social media, make sure that you are responsive to your customers. So some customers, they don't want to check their emails. They want to tweet, for example. If you have a Twitter page, make sure you're responsive to your customers on Twitter. So really look at how you're communicating, and the best, most relevant means of communication with your customers and clients. I think that's the most important means of communicating at the moment.
Okay, and this is a question actually for both of you. So I'll ask, and whoever wants to come in first, please do. But what opportunities should people be seeking to take advantage of to raise their brand or their position or their companies right now?
I think that just going off of what Ronke was saying, I think what's really important right now is if you can help more people by amplifying correct information and accurate information, then you get to build trust, right? That at the end of the day, the most important thing you could give someone right now is the facts. It's prevention tips, prevention measures. It's things that they can use, like tips that make this easier for them. So for example, I'm like, within our own communities, you might know graphic designers, you might know content producers who are already maybe have large followings, who may already be doing stuff to get content out. And maybe what you could do is either partner with them, collaborate with them to amplify their work, and and, you know, get your brand out there, that you're facilitating the work that they're doing that's benefiting the community. I think the big thing right now is, yes, it's important for all of us to, as entrepreneurs, think about our businesses and profit, but I think right now people want to know that you care about them, that you're more than just about profit. And I think the way to demonstrate that is to basically convey this message of we're in this together, and using it as an opportunity to then collaborate with other people within your space, outside of your space, to make sure that the larger community that you serve are getting the information and the resources that they need to deal. It could be information on mental health. It could be information on how to deal with, you know, the kids at home. Just useful information that can be tailored for your local environment. So for example, one of the things that I'm doing in Sierra Leone is I'm producing these children's stories in local languages to help talk about different social distancing and hand washing, but I'm using folklore, traditional folklore and like animals to tell these stories and passing it around on social media, et cetera, et cetera. And in the end, all you hear is that it's produced by my company, but the key part of the story is about the story and the messaging. And I think that kind of stuff, especially on the continent, doing stuff in local languages, trying to find ways to reach more people on the end. So then, because they're audio stories, I also was able to send them out to local radio stations that then have been playing the stories on air for wider reach. So children are listening to this, and people who are also not digital, who can't read, because Sierra Leone's illiteracy rate is about 50%, right? So only 50% of the population can read and write. So if you have local content that you're pushing out there to bring the information closer to underserved communities, I think that's a really great positioning for anybody on the continent who's in business right now.
Absolutely agree. I think it's the amplification bit and the collaboration bit, those are really important. I also think that if you're in a small organization, make sure that you reassure your team, and your team who are the public facing members of the team usually, or who are, you know, who undertake customer care, and they give them the time and space to breathe. Because I think in the midst of all this, everybody's still trying to do the work, and everybody's still trying to put out a lot of content. And I think it's important to make sure that you balance things out. I think if you are an entrepreneur, business owner, and if you've created content in the past, you can actually use this time to just re-amplify content that you've already got, right? So I think people are going to start feeling exhausted if they're trying to necessarily create new content. So what I'd rather they do is look at all the things they've made before, and maybe repost, reshare, tidy up some blog posts, and re-amplify some of their contacts content. There's a lot of content out there actually. So I don't want people to get content fatigue. I kind of feel like you can create some new content for now if you feel ready, because remember, this is a crisis that we've never seen before in our lifetimes. So there's a lot of mental pressure as well. So I just want to make sure that if you've got content already, look at what you can do to re-share some of that relevant content, and kind of be easy on yourself, and be easy on your employees, and be easy on your colleagues as well, because it's hard. I think we underestimate how hard it is at the moment.
I really love that you both have touched on that mental health element. And so in the opposite to that question, how would it impact on companies to go quiet at this time? Yeah, like what levels are we looking at here?
I think going quiet is kind of like being tone deaf almost, that like that you like at this moment in time you can reduce your output, I think, but going quiet right now,
it's just, I mean, there's a really good,
that's a hard no.
No, but there's a really good example. I won't name the name because obviously I don't want any trouble, but there's a good example of a major festival that's quite popular within the African diaspora in Europe, and they've been doing some great work. They had a festival, I think, last year on the continent. Again, I'm not going to be specific because people are going to guess who it is, but they've been they were quite quiet. And you can imagine a lot of festivals and major events obviously all events are consumer-led, right, and consumer-driven, obviously, but a lot of major events have literally announced that they are going to postpone or cancel, offer refunds or offer information on how you can get refunds, you know, sharing information about how you can do things that, you know, will reassure their customers. But this particular festival has been really quiet, and what I've noticed is the damage to its reputation, because on social media they've been catching a lot of negative responses and reaction, because they're just not even saying, look, if we do have to cancel, this is how you can get a refund, right? And I think it's really important to make sure, I mean, they've released a couple of vague statements, but you can see from the public reaction that you need to be a bit more specific when it comes to major consumer-led. So silence is not really an option at this time.
So how can businesses reach or find people like yourselves, especially if you're a smaller business? I mean, this is a bigger sounding entity, so they should have their PR people down. But I mean, sometimes you're almost scared to know what to say and how to say it, because you're not trying to be insensitive, because that can come back and bite you, but you're also not really clear on how you should position yourself. So in terms of where small businesses could go in the first instance, do you have any suggestion in that regard?
Small business personalities, brands, individuals, one of the things I always tell people is that you have to be watching or doing social listening of the industry leaders. Like, even if I'm a very, very small business, there's somebody in the industry, either locally or in another country, that I see as my peer, right? As I see as my destination. So if you have zero clue of like where to start or where to go, I say, please go and see what somebody else is doing. And then you can make it more realistic. For example, just like a quick thing, I had to come up with copy for a client who is like a former president. And I was like, what is the presidential thing to say in a time like this? I don't know what the president. So I went to go and see what other African presidents were saying. And I said, aha, this is the couple last tweets that they have made, whatever. Let us come and like finesse this for you. And so, and that took like just a really quick, because I know that they have their full comms team ready. And so the good thing is that, you know, that people like that who are bigger, who have more resources, they have what I like to call R&D comms, research and development. They have a team of people with the resources who are making sure that the content is right, the tone is right, the language is right. So you can really look to them for guidance, but of course, making sure that you speak and say those things in your own voice, in the voice and language that your audience is familiar with. Don't go start dropping epidemiological terms and this are people like, my sister, it is just fashion. Why are you trying to kill us with So like, just stay within your own comfort area.
So learn from or take from those that you aspire to be, perhaps, but then make sure that it's authentic to yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all who are listening. Please do put any questions in the chat area. We are now open for questions. So if you have any for Ronke or for Vickie or even for myself, please do pop them into the chat area, and then we'll be able to address some of those. Ronke, were you going to come back on that last point?
I wanted to say I absolutely agree. I think what I find, especially at times of crisis, people panic and just stay focused on self or their own business operation. And I think we're in an era, the technological era, where it makes it so much easier just to look like awareness and social listening are such powerful means of research. And sometimes it makes what we do sound like common sense. Like, you should just do a little bit of look and see what somebody else in your industry is doing. And then, but unfortunately, I think because people think, especially business founders, startup founders, it's a very personal kind of project. So I guess sometimes the ego will block that kind of understanding that actually we should look at what somebody else is doing just to see and see the response as well, because, you know, not everybody else is doing it better than you or doing it right, but actually it's a good way of researching and seeing that actually, yeah, that may not be the right way to go for me. And as Vickie said, it's about your voice and authenticity. And just, but also be mindful. I think sometimes we do things that we think are going to work because of our customers. So we say things in a tone of voice that we think is cool, or we think, are going to be popular, and it can backfire. So make sure you just think before you share any kind of communication, and just don't, because we're in an era now that crisis can happen over the most ridiculous things, right? And we're already in a crisis time. So just be calm, take your time, and be patient.
Okay, so thinking about that, we're in a crisis time. We're looking ahead. Vickie's suggested 12 years. A month.
Yeah, girl, 12 years.
Oh no, that was not prophecy. 12 months. 12 months. So what are some of the what are some steps perhaps that people could be thinking about in preparation? Because I think somebody talked about strategy for dealing with this now, but what could we be thinking about in preparing for our overall strategy?
During Ebola, during and after Ebola, I came to talk to women who were in business in Sierra Leone at the time about how they had dealt with the crisis. And the 3 people that I spoke to, they were primarily in hospitality, 2 restaurateurs and 1 who owned the guest house. And all of them, they had scaled back a little, but they had stayed open throughout. And so when business started going, I think there's this thing people feel, so for those who can stay open, I would really advise you to not shut down your business. If you shut down, you may not be able to like reopen, and that's just a fact. So I think to start thinking about, okay, even if I'm offering less services, less products, and like I'm scaling down, I have to let people know that I'm still here for you, right? Because if you can easily close, it means that your business kind of was, in a way, non-essential. Okay. Right? It's almost the kind of message you're communicating that, like, during a time of crisis, I shut down. We are not part of the businesses that are important for everyday life, which you don't want to, it's like shooting yourself in the foot. So you have to find a way to pivot. You have to find a way. One of the stories I'm actually publishing today is looking at what fashion designers are doing with regards to COVID. And everybody's gone from fashion to function, right? Which is now they're producing these African print masks. And some people might think that that's like, I don't know, like they might look down on it, but I think it's so amazing because it is like an immediate pivoting response to the market needs. So everybody has to think about, right now, how can I respond with a service or a product? It may not be a big thing, it might be a little thing, but stay present in the community and continue to find ways to add value. Because when we transition out of this crisis, those services might become now like bread and butter to your institution, because if they're needed in a crisis, just imagine that when things are like, listen, these things might become mainstay. And so you might discover that it's like a completely different like product or service extension. So I would say to prepare for the reopening of business or life coming back to normal is to think about continuity. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't shut down, don't close. Just keep chugging along, however small. Like my company right now, there's only 2 of us here. Usually it's 7. We're not shutting down. We're finding ways to stay relevant, even if it means not making a profit, right? Because we need to say that, we're here, we're service providers, and we're going to keep being here because we're an essential part of business. We're an essential part of communications. We're essentials to life. And I think that every company needs to find a way to show how, even in a state of crisis, fashion is essential for life. Find a way.
And I think just to kind of springboard off that, looking at the communities in the UK and in Europe, the African diaspora communities, there's a lot of local product service-based industry. So we've got the salons, you've got the little caterers, and I think a lot of them were in their comfort zone, actually, and we allowed that to some degree because they were the uncles and aunties of the communities, right? We didn't mind if they were on social media. We didn't mind if they were on YouTube. We didn't mind. We would just let it go. But I think now maybe it's a time to encourage some of those braiders, those food, those caterers to do little videos, you know, get on social media, get out of their comfort zone. There's a rise and an increase, particularly for Black women and Black mothers, aunties, who are now having to braid their own hair, do their own hair. There's little DIY videos, how to learn, you know, learning how to cook. And there's a missed opportunity. There's a big gap of knowledge and teaching there. There's a teaching gap there that I think a lot of these kind of local high street salons and restaurateurs and cafe shop owners are missing out on, because they're not using social media and they're not using kind of the video-based platforms. There's a lot of things they could be doing, unfortunately, that they're not doing, unfortunately. And I don't know how we can encourage them to do it. Get off WhatsApp. Get off YouTube. Just do little things. And I think that will help, because there's these whole conversations going on. What's going to happen, you know, in the next few months? We can't go to our local salons, right? Well, I know hopefully when things get back to normal, we're going to be time poor again one day. So whilst we can do our hair now, or we can cook our food now, we're going to go back to normal eventually. But in the midst of that, it would be good to see some of those local business owners getting on social media, doing little how-to DIY videos. I don't know. That would be a good way of selling without overselling, if that makes sense.
That's actually really good. We have a question from Atu. Hello, Atu. Welcome. And he asks, in this difficult time, how do we get people to pay for our services without overselling? And I think that's such a good question, because we talked earlier, I think we were having a conversation about video overwhelm, and I, for one, was just like, wow, who knew there was so many webinars that could come at you so quickly? And I was thinking, how are people going to start monetizing this? Especially as there's so much free content. But in relation to Atu's question, how can people get people to pay for their services without overselling?
I think, well,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, because I've had this conversation with a few contacts, especially now there's more fitness videos going on right now, right? And there's this conversation about how do they monetize their fitness regimes from IG Live into something that makes them money. I think initially it's about, you know, introducing your services. So I think with Vickie had said, not everything you can do you can get money for, right? But it is about establishing your brand, raising your brand visibility. For some of you who've never been on social media before, who have no database at all, who've relied on literally just people paying for you directly, and I don't know what business model you have to start to, you know, change the habits of some of your consumers, get people to get used to seeing you, and offer some taster sessions. And then once they see the value, once you've built that relationship, then they will be more inclined to pay for your service. But you have to show that you can add value to them. It's a tricky one, because if you haven't established that brand, it's easier if you've already established a brand. Most people will buy from you because they trust you. But if you're new to a certain space, then you have to do the work, actually. You have to do the work as if we weren't in this. And if you're doing the work, you've got to just market yourself and figure out a strategy and a common strategy. But I'll let Vickie.
No, I mean, I was going to say, you mean people who owe you right now, or like new people? Because that's a whole other conversation there about getting these invoices paid in a time of crisis. But
what I can do is I can let you ask your question more specifically. So I'm going to allow you to talk. I have the power.
No.
So go ahead, Atu. What did you can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Antoine, so basically I have a service where currently I don't charge, but I sort of connect people and I share events. I'm basically the plug. So anything someone needs, they come to me through the WhatsApp group that I created. So I think eventually I'll have to charge for it, because it takes my time and I have a 9 to 5. But the thing is, I've been doing it free for a while now. So I'm thinking, how do I charge it without sort of overselling?
Sure. I think that you need to create like a free version and then a premium version, right? So I always feel like adding frills is a way that you can let the people who have been used to getting it for free still know that there is a component that is free, but then create like a more specialized version that's like, okay, this particular service has a premium component, and this is what you get when you pay. Because it'll be difficult to get people to pay for what's already been free.
Yeah.
So you now have to kind of create like a product extension where you're like, okay, this is what I do generally, but now here's a premium version where I'm doing this, this, and this. It might mean that, like, yes, you have to commit more time to doing it, but I think that ultimately you will get hits from within that community of people because they want those premium services. I would say maybe the first thing is to start with a survey that you can put out within the like WhatsApp chat group to just see what additional product extensions do people want or need from the service. And then based on the responses, you can use that to then create like what the premium version could be. That's just an idea.
And on the flip, you can also do it the other way around as well. You can actually get brands to sponsor your messages. So it might just be easier. And if you're a good salesperson or whatever, just get brands to sponsor your updates, your newsletters. I know it's WhatsApp group messages. You might want to figure out another platform to share these messages. But maybe you can start getting money from the actual products or services that you're promoting. It sounds like you're promoting other people's products and services, right? So maybe you could just become more of a do more sponsored post style content, perhaps. Maybe that. So you wanted to keep it free because it's going to be and as Vickie said, it's going to be challenging to convert people who are very used to getting something for free to start paying. YouTube tried to start charging, like YouTube had this whole thing where they were trying to get more paid for content. And it's there, even YouTube were struggling, right? Because everybody's watching YouTube videos for free. The way they make their money is from advertising though. So you've got to figure out how do you flip it so you can keep your database strong, but you make your money. So it goes back to your strategy.
I'm gonna open up now. Mariama has a question. So Mariama, I have unmuted. So if you unmute yourself, you can ask your question. Okay. In the meantime, okay, so Mariama has asked, our customers are based in rural communities with limited access to the internet. How best can we reach them during this difficult period? And then she also has a follow-up question. Oh, okay. Her background is noisy, so we'll keep it here.
Oh, no worries. Oh, I got a solution for you, Mariama, because I know exactly where you're talking about.
She's also asking, we also have customers with outstanding payments who are complaining about making payments during this time. Good question. Any suggestions, recommendations?
Sure. So for rural communities, for rural communities, I would say partnering with community-based radio stations would be the ideal way. So I know exactly where Mariama works. There are community radio is the #1 way to communicate with the masses. And so I would say whatever your messaging is right now, whatever information you want to get out there, working with the local DJs within those community radio stations is going to be the most effective way to stay in contact with your community in rural areas, because also they really trust the community radio stations. They are their front line for everything. So being embedded within those community radio stations is really going to also build a stronger relationship and trust during this crisis between your company and consumers there. With regard to those people who are not paying, I'm going to say that those people they have always not wanted to pay. They have not wanted to pay from before. It's not crisis, because please, all of the communities that you're working right now currently have 0 cases. I know because I'm in Sierra Leone. So my concern would be like, I know that you work with, just specifically in your case, you have sales agents. So I really think that it's about the sales agents to start to try to collect small. Say, okay, fine. If this is, especially in rural communities, if this is, okay, if you cannot, I'm even trying to speak Creole because it's my if you cannot pay all, how much can you pay today? So today collect small. And then come back another day. Okay, you cannot pay all. How much can you pay today? Is it 10,000? Is it 50,000? Is it 20,000? Make sure you're collecting small, and keeping a log of that, because otherwise you won't be able to get these funds at all.
Does that apply across the board? Because I'm sure this is a key concern for a number of businesses. We've seen the bigger banks in the UK, and everybody's getting very excited about some of the initiatives that some of the governments are putting forward. But then on the smaller business, how can they still have concern and show that trust and show that we're in this together, but still need to get paid? So
no, you have to. I had to send an invoice to a client, and I felt bad for sending the invoice during the crisis. So I'll just send the invoice via email, and this of course isn't, you can't just rule, but I used WhatsApp, and I sent him a message and I said, I'm sending you this invoice because it's due, but I also acknowledge that these are really, really difficult times. But I have to send it to you, so I'm sending it. And I sent that message because I wanted to give them an opportunity then to, if there was a problem like, oh, Vickie, these are difficult times, I wanted to kind of make that outreach to say, I'm sending this, it's coming, just so you're aware. And I think that let them know that I was like sensitive to the crisis. But then when I did that, he said, oh, no problem at all, I got you. I sent the invoice and they paid me in 24 hours.
Nice.
Unbelievable.
Any thoughts, even in normal time?
I think that it is about how you communicate with your client when you're invoicing, and just being mindful about, and also just mentally prepare yourself that some people might surprise you, right? Some people who you think might be take long might immediately pay. Some people who good. So you just have to, because this time has been so unexpected, it's just changing and challenging the way a lot of people are doing business. So I think how you communicate, but also communicate consistently. Don't give up. Don't try your best not to turn it into anything that's negative or acrimonious. We want to make it as peaceful as possible, because that's an added stress. And then again, like I mentioned earlier, make sure you also have your information in legal terms, right? So if people aren't paying you, if there's an agreement set in place, legally they should still be paying you, right? So just make sure you've got your language and your legal terminology ready if things start to fall apart.
And it's actually really helpful that you mentioned that, because, and I'll talk a bit more about it later, the Afford Business Club has a relationship with a legal firm, and next week's webinar is looking at contracts and COVID. So looking at both your contracts with employees, but then also where you stand if you have contracts with service you're the service provider.
That's great.
Both panelists have said thank you, and I just wanted to touch on the training element that we sort of touched upon. How far can businesses go from their business as usual delivery into another realm? So if, as you were saying, you're usually a cook or a chef or in a restaurant, you're a dancer, a singing instructor, whatever your business is, how big a jump can you take before it just is like you're completely, you've lost, it's not correct here? Because like Vickie, you're doing the children's writing, but it still links in with that comms.
Right.
So
Sure.
if I'm a chef, going into doing cookery classes isn't a huge jump, but people's minds don't connect in these different ways. So
I think I always think about, just for my own survival as an entrepreneur, I'm always thinking about multiple revenue streams, right? And of course, my first things that I think about are those things that are offshoots within the same domain, maybe a different kind of service for the same kind of customer, or just like, I'm always thinking about, what else can we offer here? What else can we do? What can we provide? Is it a smaller package? Is it like a different kind of solution altogether? So I'm always thinking about that generally. But for where we are now, I think these are uncharted waters. I feel like people should, like Ronke started saying, that like, give yourself a break. I found myself putting out a message just last week asking people, how many people on my TL was paid for dance classes that were virtual, African dance classes? Now, and then, people responded. I just put out a question on my Instagram, and I probably got a dozen hits of people who said they would pay $10 a class for a virtual dance class. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that they will sign up, but that just gives me like some kind of gauge as to like in terms of pricing, right? Am I a dancer? No, but people do know that I do dance with my dance. But the reason why I actually want to do this class isn't necessarily for myself, is because my dancers and my drummers, they are now kind of out of work because of this. So I was thinking about how can I help them gain more, and they're all illiterate. How can I help them connect with a world that's at home, that doesn't have anywhere to go, and can we bring them African drums that like are helping me in terms of therapy right now? Can we share that with the world virtually? And so just like test the waters. And I think, again, it's not about necessarily, you can't be coming out looking like you're trying to make a profit, right? So the price points matter, because remember, people have lost jobs, are losing jobs, they're afraid of whether or not they'll keep their jobs. Like, we're all in a state of insecurity. So if you're gonna like pivot to do a product or service extension like a virtual service, I think the key thing to remember is let it be within the domain of adding value within the context of this crisis. So is it a mental health service that you're providing? Is it I think people should stay away from like the educational department of like, I want to come and, teach you some kind of, I don't know, like classes, but more in terms of like giving people a release, right? Release from home, a release from like the immobility. I think that's where virtual options. Yeah, definitely.
Ronke?
I absolutely agree. I think but I mentioned earlier in terms of comfort zones, I think you just take it step by step and carve up, okay, what would you be, because I want people to get out of the comfort zone, but it's easier said than done. So most people say, yeah, I'm going to try it, and it takes them ages to kind of get into that next realm. Also look at other types of content if possible. So if you can create something that's like an e-guide or a book. I'm not saying write a book, because like there's a lot of pressure already. So I'm not saying sit down and use this time to write a book. But if you can write something, maybe a pamphlet that might be useful in this time. If you don't feel comfortable in front of a camera, maybe writing something or drawing something, if you've got that skill in alignment with what you do, might be a good way of pivoting. But it's looking at, okay, how do you transition, take it step by step, but challenge yourself. It's a hard one because there's so much going on. And again, I want to just be mindful that we have to be easy, take it easy on each other. So, I don't want to put pressure on anyone, but if you can find a way to use your skills in a new way, do so. And just challenge yourself. Even using the word challenging just seems a little bit counterintuitive.
Motivation turn into something practical.
Yeah.
Something like that. So Jenny. And then the last question comes from Mariama, and she's asking, does anyone know of any emergency funding to support businesses? I know the UK ones are only UK based and not for work on the continent.
There is actually a list that I want to pull up really quickly. I need to go and get the resource, but it's a COVID resource that's been put together by Duke University in the US that's being updated daily, that has like everything from grants to loans to equity funding that's available primarily, yes, in the West, the UK, but it also includes global opportunities no matter where you are. So I just wanted to, I can paste it in here, or I can email it back to you, and you can share it with as a resource when you do the final kind of webinar, because I think it's a great resource. Even if you don't apply, you might know somebody who could benefit right now.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. So I have a final question for both of you. What we've been reaching out to ask some of our business members to do is share what is their business or personal tip in this moment. So my own was, I'm using the Pomodoro technique, where in every 30 minutes, you take 5-minute breaks. And so you're working, you take a break, you work, and that way you get up, you stretch, you breathe, you come back. And that way work just seems a little bit calmer and less pressured. So I'd like to finish by asking both of you, I will come to Vickie and then Ronke, about what is your business personal coping tip to make it through this. What did you call it? We're Corona surviving, to help us
surviving Corona.
Yes.
I think for me, what's working on a personal level is empathy for myself. I'm giving myself all the empathy for all the places I can't be, like with my family and my child. And also when I feel like I'm not producing, because what we don't account for is how much the trauma that we're all experiencing is going to impact our productivity. So if you're used to being a very productive person, you're going to be very hard on yourself that press release, that blog post, like it's just not coming together. You're like, oh my God, it's taking me 5 days, one blog post, what is going on? And so I'm just giving myself empathy to just realize like, we're in a state of crisis. It's okay to not produce in that way. So I'm forgiving myself and giving myself empathy. And then also I'm allowing myself to do unusual things. I slept outside on my veranda last night. I didn't sleep inside. I just laid outside right now.
And my sisters didn't come for you. Okay, good.
They came, my sister, but I was like, the breeze is nice. I can't come and kill myself. Stay at home, stay in this compound, inside the building. Let me just lay here. I'm just going to lay. And so, I'm drying fruits, I'm making jam. I'm doing all kinds of shit because at this point in time, I'm like, this is a moment for experimentation. This is a moment to try things you've never tried before. It's a moment to be a fool, to be silly, to be creative, everything. So that at the end of it, you discover something new about yourself. So maybe I'm going to start a fruit drying business. Who knows?
So empathy, self-care, and stepping out of every box, including your house.
All of the boxes.
no, stay at home. Ronke.
I think the one thing that's really important is to ensure you get the right amount of rest. Now, the thing is, everybody thinks because they're working from home or they're at home, if they can work from home, that they're resting. But actually, because of the way our society is structured, capitalism, our productivity is linked to, our essence almost. It's almost like we've got to keep working. And some people are doing more work or trying to work more than normal. And actually, we're going through a very traumatic era and time right now. So I just think it's really important to rest. I think you should make sure that you cut off at a certain time every day. I'm really clear on the times when I stop working. That's when I stop working. It's, we're already in a state of emergency. So anything else cannot be any more of a great of emergency. And you should be able to wait till the next day. So make sure you balance your time, you rest. I think it's really important to just have fun, and whatever fun looks like to you. I know it's limited now. I know we've always said fun is going out partying and doing whatever. Find new ways of having fun. Be silly. And be kind to yourself and to others. I don't want us to judge each other. There's this thing now that I think people are starting to envy each other in terms of, because there's so many more pictures of people from their homes, right? So people have developed home envy.
Looking at what are they got in their house?
I know, all of these things. You see what I mean? So I think it's important just to take a break from social media, from anything that's going to cause you to lose empathy and compassion for yourself and for others. Really just take the time to rest and to recalibrate and to have fun.
So much. So we've got rest, recalibrate, self-care, step out of the box, but not your compound or house. Fun. That is fantastic. Thank you so much, ladies. I'm just going to very quickly share with you all the details I promised. So just, oh goodness, working with this is always fun. Let me see. All right. Okay. Take two. So, yes, here we are. So these are Ronke's details. I think you can all see my screen. Here are the details for Vickie. And I had mentioned that we are going to be having our legal seminar coming up. I definitely advise this for those who follow the British legal system, wherever you are in the world, and those in the UK, obviously, who would find this useful in managing your contracts, because it's really important. These are some of the things we ignore, and then they come back later on and cause us some real problems. So we will be sending these out. And if you want to stay in touch or have any questions, please do. I'll also be sending you some information about some of the work Afford is doing. We have a survey at the moment, which is looking at what we call the return of the icons. We want to find out what you will think about returning artifacts from their borrowed homes, taking them back to the continent. And that will lead to a bigger project. So what you say, what you think really, really does matter. And we'll be sharing the link for you to be able to do that. We really would love to get details by the end of this week. So we'll be sharing those with you later today or tomorrow morning. But again, thank you so much, Vickie. Thank you so much, Ronke. Stay safe. Your knowledge and skills are needed. So
don't get corona. Hey, my sister.
Essence. And everybody, thank you so much for your questions, helping our conversation. Can we see the second page, please? Okay, let me quickly pop that back up. I am going to send it to you, so don't worry, you will get it. And if you're a member, please look at the newsletter. All of the information is in the newsletter as well. But thank you, ladies. Thank you, everybody. And have a really good week.
Okay, take care.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Bye.